So today's lesson is about word problems that involve profit. So before anything else, I'm going to give you a formula for profit. We actually use P equals R minus C, which stands for profit equals revenue minus cost. So just a few little definitions. The thing that people get confused most about is revenue. I think that might be the one new word here. So the revenue, we will sometimes call it the selling price. The main idea is that it's the amount the seller actually takes in. And in this case, the cost can mean many different things, but it's going to be the amount that the seller actually pays. It's not the amount the customer pays, but the amount the seller pays. And it includes all expenses. That's the key thing with that. So we're going to include all expenses as a cost. So the profit is going to be the amount that you make after taking into account all of your expenses. So let's go through a few examples. Remember, formula is the profit equals revenue minus cost. So for this, it says we bought 50 candy bars for 75 cents each and sold them all for $1 each. How much profit did we make? So we know that we're looking for profit. That's the first thing that we know. So in this problem, they don't actually specifically state what the revenue and the cost are, but they're not too hard to find. So remember, the revenue is the amount the seller takes in. So in this case, you're the seller. So you sold all of the candy bars for $1 each. So in this case, your revenue is going to be $1 per candy bar. And actually, since we have a total of 50 candy bars, we know our revenue is going to be $1 times 50. So our revenue is going to be $50. So that's the first thing that we have. The second thing is us as the seller, we know that we bought the candy bars for 75 cents each. So remember, this cost represents our cost as a salesperson. So if we spent 75 cents each for 50 candy bars, then we're going to find out that our cost is going to be 50 times 70 cents, which is $0.75. Make sure you put everything in dollars here. And that is going to be $37.50. So from there, we subtract this out. We get 50 minus 37.50. That's going to give us that our profit is $12.50. So here's another problem. Remember, once again, our formula is P equals R minus C. So this is saying that your aunt flips houses for a living. So in this case, your aunt is the seller. What it means by flipping houses is that means that she buys a house, she makes it look nice, and then she sells it again. So this says that she bought a house for $3,000, then spent $35,000 on renovation. So actually, in this case, the $3,000 is a cost that your aunt had to make. Also, the $35,000, it's what we call an expense, but it's part of our cost. So these are both parts of the cost. On the other hand, the selling price, the $500,000, is actually going to be our revenue. So if it helps you, sometimes you can think of revenue as just being a fancy way to say selling price. So the way that we're going to set this up to find our profit is I always like to just find my overall cost first. So I know my revenue is $5,000. My cost, I'm just going to get by adding together my two expenses, which was buying the house and doing the renovations, When I add those two together, I get that my total cost, or my aunt's total cost in this case, was $335,000. So in this case, my profit is going to be $500,000, my revenue, the amount that I sold it for, the amount my aunt sold it for, excuse me, minus the amount that my aunt had to pay in order to buy this house and renovate it. So in the end, her total profit is going to be $165,000. So our third problem is actually going to use the same formula, but in this case we're actually looking for something different. So this tells us that your parents own a business that costs $1,463 to run each day. So this amount for your parents is one of their costs. So this is a cost for the seller. And this next thing they tell you is that the profit yesterday was $1,281. Then they ask how much money did they bring in. So the amount of money they brought in, this is another way to say revenue. So it's the amount of money, amount of sales that they made, the amount they brought in is their revenue. So we are going to use the same formula that we had before, except that now our unknown, our variable, is going to be R for revenue. So we are just going to set this up like we would set up a normal equation. The only thing that's a little tricky about this is that the numbers are kind of big, but you're just going to solve it like you solved equations at the very beginning of the year. We get our R by itself. You do that by adding 1,463 to both sides. Remember, it is okay to use your calculator on this type of problem. When you do that, you get $2,744, and that's actually the revenue. So that's the amount, the total amount that they brought in yesterday. So number 4 is a multi-step equation. There's a few things going on. We are still going to use the same formula for profit. You use them for all of these problems, but now there's going to be a few things that are slightly different. So first thing they tell you is that the school play cost $500 to produce. So this is the amount the school has to spend. That is going to be classified as a cost. You predict that you will sell 300 tickets. If you want to make a profit of $1,000, how much should you charge for each ticket? So in this case, they give us the cost and they give us what we want for profit. The thing that we don't have is revenue. However, in order to confuse things, they actually throw in an extra 300 there. So what we're looking for is not actually just revenue. We're looking for the cost per ticket. So I'm going to call that X. You can call it T or whatever variable you want to. So we're going to call the cost per ticket X. So in our equation, you'll notice we have room for profit, we have room for cost. We don't have anything in there that says ticket, but we do have that R for revenue that's not filled in yet. So actually, to find our revenue, the revenue, remember, is the amount of sales that they take in. So if the school sells 300 tickets and the cost of the ticket is X, the revenue is going to be 300 times X. So the way that we're going to write out our equation is as 1,000 equals 300x minus 500. So from there, now we have an equation that we can solve. It's similar to the way we solved them in the beginning of the school year. We're going to start by moving over the 500, add it to both sides. From there, you divide both sides by 300. You end up getting 5 for x. So we're going to say that you're not just going to write 5, you're going to write they should charge $5, or you can write $5 down. Make sure that you answer the question. So if you were to work this problem out and you got something like that they should charge negative 800 for each ticket, you would know that that was probably wrong. So just make sure that as you're doing it, as you get an answer, that your answer is reasonable. So our last problem, it doesn't look like it's a profit problem because they're asking how much did he lose, but actually when you're doing any problem involving loss, it's the same thing as profit. The only thing about it is that it is going to be a negative. So loss is going to be the same as profit, but the number will be negative. So if you're finding as you work out one of these problems that you get a negative number for your profit, it doesn't necessarily mean that you did it wrong. It just means that you had a loss and no profit. So it's the same as profit, but it'll be a negative profit. So in this case, we're still going to use the same equation. And the seller here is your dad. So your dad's original cost was $25,000. Now, your dad's revenue is the amount that he resold it for. So this is his revenue. So what we're going to do is we're going to write it as P equals $18,500 minus $25,000. When you work that out, you will get negative $6,500. And we actually know that it should be negative because it's asking us how much he lost. So you wouldn't really answer this question with negative $6,500. You would say something like, my dad lost $6,500. So something like that is a good way to answer that question. So for the rest of the period, I would like you to be working on the rest of your problems that you have. You can ask your substitute which ones you have to do if you're not sure. And I would like you to just do the best that you can on them. I know some of them are very hard, but we'll go over them when we come back on block day.